Hey guys, welcome back to Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, if you're just joining us, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So one of the things we do on our podcast is we do interviews with people who are doing things for others, and surprisingly, it actually makes their life better by helping other people. And our guest tonight is in a long line of outstanding people that we have on the podcast. Gail was in a tough accident when she was a very little girl, and she's going to talk about that accident and how it impacted her through the course of her life, and how later in life she was able to kind of overcome the fear and kind of perceived embarrassment of sharing the details around that to help other people that might be in similar situations. She's very accomplished professionally, so she's going to talk some about her career and her coaching business and the books that she has written and share great advice on those things. So without further ado, let's bring Gail onto the channel now. Gail, thank you so much for joining us in Salty Ginger Talk. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Joe. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. We had a great conversation several weeks ago, and really interested in your you sharing your story and your life lessons with the listeners, because I think you have some very unique experiences that we haven't covered on the podcast before. So I'm really excited about that. But can you just start off like early life? You had a kind of a really difficult experience early life. Can you start there, kind of briefly walk us through that, and then we can jump into other stuff from there?
Sure, happy to. I was born in upstate New York. I was born in the mid 50s, and I was born to two amazing parents. And at 2.5, we had just moved into a neighborhood, and my mom was invited to a mother daughter tea, although then they didn't drink so much tea, it was more coffee. And so we walked down to the neighbor's house and went inside. And I remember, I was 2.5. I remember their kitchen table being like a picnic table, very tall, with a bench against the wall. And I tried to climb up, and they had just taken cookies out of the oven. And they had also just put a fresh 40 cup pot of coffee on the table. And I reached for a cookie and I knocked the pot of coffee off the table and all over me. So
Oh,
40% of my body was burned as a toddler at 2.5. My mom says before that accident, I was an outgoing girly girl who loved everything frilly, from bows in my hairs to bows on my shoes. And she made all of our clothes from when I was born, and then after my sister came along. And she said I loved to meet new people and go new places. And after the accident, of course, I was hospitalized for a number of months. My parents didn't know if I would live or die. And as a side note to that, because of that, my mom took my dad by the hand one day and said, "We have to go home and make a baby because ours may not survive." So I had a sister 9 months later. And I grew up as a result of that accident with huge fears and phobias, and later in life, impostor syndrome, and had to overcome a lot because even though you don't see my scars, I have them over the
hmm.
majority of my body. And so there's always talk among burn survivors and onlookers that, is it worse to have scars that show, or is it worse to have scars that don't show because we feel guilty because we don't have anything that people can look at to recognize that we're a survivor? So anyway, overcame a lot of those. Those fears and phobias were some rational, some irrational. Obviously, fire. Not that I was burned by fire, but something hot and liquid. So I don't light sparklers on 4th of July. I've never gotten into like firecrackers or any of that. To kind of crazy stuff like being afraid of heights and being afraid of spiders and snakes and all those kinds of things. And so, yeah, I have lots of stories about how I overcame them in over the last 70 years.
Yeah, wow, that's a very unique and challenging experience for sure. And this happened in the 50s, so you've got a couple of years on me. I'm not far behind you, but I think most people that were born kind of post internet revolution don't really know kind of how uh, uh, I'm trying to think of the right word, prehistoric, for lack of a better way of saying it, or rudimentary the world used to be. So you're a toddler in the 50s and you've got severe burns that almost took your life. What was that recovery process like? Let's start with just medically, and I'm sure you don't remember it, but I'm sure you've been told what happened. What was the medical process by which you could recover and, kind of get back to living your life?
Yeah, so interesting, right? No cell phones, no 911. So, and there were party lines back there. So you'd pick up the phone on the wall and you'd say, "Hey, I need to call my doctor." And there'd be four other people having conversations. You'd be like, "No, this is an emergency. I need to call my doctor." And so you'd hear the hang up. And so my mom would get to the doctor and he said, "We'll meet you at the ER." And our neighbor, the house that we were at, the hostess was a nurse. So back then, the philosophy was if you suffer a burn, you take the clothes off. Well, they've learned since then that there are other things to do because what happens when you pull the clothes off is your skin comes with it.
Mm.
So that was the first experience. And you're right, I don't remember much of anything until I was about 3.5. But there were no pediatric ICU units, there were no specific burn units. And so I was put on a regular pediatric floor, sharing a room with like three or four other kids. Burns happen to be among the most painful things that can happen to our bodies. And my mom told the story before she passed of walking into the room after dinner one evening, and she could hear my screams all the way down the hall. And she walks into the room, and this nurse is shaking me and hitting me. And she's like, "Excuse me, what's going on?" And the nurse is like, "I can't stop her from crying." And my mother like grabbed me out of her arms and said, "Get out of here."
Mm.
Needless to say, my mom's pretty sure that nurse lost her job. But things were different then. There really weren't, empathetic protocol type things for people, caregivers to follow. And from the burn perspective, things were treated very differently. So I did not have skin grafts. I did get plasma from whole blood, and I was also treated with radiation. So, radiation leaves itself, as we know today, when people are radiated for instance, cancer treatment, there's a whole host of things that happen. Your skin burns from that, you lose your hair, you struggle with a lot of different things. You are dehydrated and so on. So I struggled with all of those as a young person once I got out of the hospital. And come to find out years later, when I started to come out of hiding just 2.5 years or so ago, I met another burn survivor who coincidentally is my age, was burned at the same age, 2.5, virtually the same way. And she had a lot more background research information. And what we've learned and have been sharing now is even though there's no research that qualifies what I'm going to say, we know anecdotally that burn survivors struggle with GI issues, with fertility issues, um, neurological, like a whole host of physical things.
Mhm.
So I was fortunate enough 2 years ago, October will be 2 years, to have been provided registration and hotel and airfare to an international burn society conference. And it was in Baltimore, just outside of Washington, D.C. And in some of these breakout sessions, I had a chance to talk to burn surgeons and plastic surgeons and so on, and talk to them about how can we get some research on the fact that so many of us struggle with the same after effects. And
Mm.
clearly you can't go back in time and do that, but they are now doing research on current burn survivors and following them for a period of 20 years to see what happens. And so the future looks so much brighter for so many different reasons, right? Technology, research, um, all of that is changing as we speak. So that's really good. If I had a little tiny piece to do that, that was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So like it sounds like the the medical treatment was the radiation and the plasma, but you just kind of had to stay until your skin regenerated itself. Is that how it worked?
No, they let me out. I was hospitalized for a few months. I don't know exact. I mean, as you can imagine, my parents were devastated
Sure.
and we never talked about the accident as I grew up. Like it was like airing dirty laundry. Not that it was my mom's fault, but I'm sure being a stepmom, I understand there was probably a lot of guilt there from both my parents. My dad, he wasn't there. My mom, she couldn't stop it from happening. And so we literally, as I grew up, we never talked about it. Never.
Yeah.
Um, what I do remember is a 3.5-year-old having my scars on my chest treated with steroid injections. And we know today steroids have all sorts of side effects as well,
Hmm.
short term and long term. So it's very interesting now to be 71 and look back at all I've experienced and all I've been through and look at the way burns are treated today and just be really grateful for the way I've turned out with very little um, knowledge or frustration or whatever from that experience, especially now that I'm out of hiding and sharing my story and healing from the inside out.
Yeah, well, let me just say thanks for doing that on the show because, like in your instance, it's burns, but I think a lot of folks who have some type of physical challenge for whatever reason, I'm psychological, and I'm not a doctor or even qualified to say why, but I know people are embarrassed, they're ashamed, and there's no reason for it. It's easy to say that when you're not the person that's dealing with the issue, but it takes people like you kind of leading the way to make it okay for other people to talk about their stuff. And I know that's why you're doing what you're doing, but I still really respect it. I still really appreciate it. And I just want to make sure you hear from us. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with our audience. So, the you said, and I was going to ask the question, but I think you already answered it. There was no, there was no therapy, there was no psychologist, there was no any outlet to help you deal with the mental and emotional trauma that would have happened from this incident. Correct?
Correct. No. The first time I ever spoke to a professional, I got connected with the Arizona Burn Foundation out of Phoenix, Arizona, as I was coming out of hiding. And I knew that that would be an organization to support, to have research and resources. And so when I connected with them, they told me about a program they have that is a peer support program, and you have to get certified to become a peer supporter. So I went through that certification program, and at the very end, I had to meet with, and I don't honestly remember if she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever, but she was a professional and therapy. And speaking to her, I opened up for the very first time about my fears, my guilt, my shame, my embarrassment, triggers, right? So when somebody says, oh my gosh, I got burned, or oh, let's go watch the fireworks, there's triggers that go off
Mm.
that put me into a state of either run or not, or whatever is happening at that moment. But I think to your point, and the reason I'm so inclined to share my story is because when we experience a trauma, and most of us in our lifetime experiences some sort of trauma, we feel alone. We feel like no one knows what it's like to be divorced, not like my divorce. No one
Mm.
knows what it's like to be burned, not like my burn. No one knows what it's like to be in a car accident, not like my, right? It's very personal. And so when we begin to share our stories, we are vulnerable. And that vulnerability, I think, comes across and it enables people to say, oh, I've been hurt in that sort of way. My story is no different, and I'm ready to share my story. Many times for the first time when I'm speaking, people in my audience either raise their hand or come up to me after. They ask for my book, they ask me to sign my book, and they're like, oh, I have long pants on because I was burned in the military or by a hot pot of pasta water or by falling into a fire pit, or know the stories that I've heard. But I only wear long pants because I don't want anybody to see my scars. The only one who's ever seen them is my wife, which is
Mm.
very true for me because the only person that really ever saw him was my husband. And so, as you can imagine, going back all those years, dating was a whole experience that we don't need to go into at the moment. But yeah, so that's why I tell my story. I feel like it's helping me heal, but it's also empowering others to share their story because when we hold stories and trauma and secrets, it's a weight on our shoulders. And when we share, we lift that burden off of our shoulders. It enables us to be a better person, a freer person, a more authentic person. And so, yeah, I don't think I'm doing it for selfish reasons. I think I'm doing it more to help others.
Yeah, look, that's very clear. So if you have any doubts, let me put your doubts at rest. It's very clear to me. That's why you're doing what you're doing. And I just really both respect it and appreciate it. So there had to be all sorts of what are ordinarily mundane experiences as you go through life that were not mundane in any way, shape, or form for you. How did you like some that come to mind? What did you do during gym class? What did you do when people wanted to go swimming? What did you do when it was time to put on a dress for the sock hop or the formal? Talk a little bit about those experiences when you were a young lady.
Yeah, so many things come to mind. So first of all, there we lived in a big city. We lived in the capital of New York in Albany. And so the thing for older girls, younger teens was get on the bus and go downtown and shop, spend your hard-earned babysitting money and go to lunch and that kind of thing. And Hunting's was like the big upscale store. And they had makeup in their bathroom, and so we could go in and play. But I would do that with one or two close friends, but I would never change in front of anybody.
Hmm.
I never I would try pants on because my scars are above my waist, but I would never try tops on in front of anybody. Only with my mom would I go shopping. Um, Gym class was another issue, right? Because you go to school in school clothes, whatever. We were much more formal then than they are now. No jeans. We had to wear dresses. Fortunately, I didn't go to a school that required uniforms, but we were dressed up. So we'd have to go to a locker room that was pretty public, and all the girls would grab their locker and get their stuff out and change into their gym shorts, or we also had a pool in junior high school. And so we'd be expected to, on those Tuesdays, put our swimsuits on. And I would always go into a bathroom stall and change and come out all ready. And, the girls would be like, does she think she's special? How come she's so stuck up? Like, why won't she do things with us? And it was pure fear and embarrassment and the fear of being judged, let alone, when you see someone, right? Little kids see you with their beard, they're going to go, oh, what's that? Right? If
Hmm.
their father doesn't have a beard or whatever. And then you take it to the next level where you have physical scars that are covering what would normally be skin. And people are going to be like, oh my, whatever. And so you don't want to expose yourself to that. You do everything you can to put those barriers up. And so that was my way of burying that. I hid. And so, along with those kind of consequences of people not befriending me because I was stuck up, I was better than everybody. I didn't get invited to some things. And yet, when I got invited to my very first slumber party, I was really not sure I wanted to go. It'd be so
Mm.
cool to be in with the in girls, right? And my mom and I had some conversations, and ultimately she said, "What do you have to lose? Just go. If you're not comfortable, you're $5 down. I'll come and get you," right? And so I went, and I went with my little bag of pajamas and a pillow and a blanket and all of that. And we had a great time. We sang, it was a birthday party, and we sang happy birthday, and we had cake and candles and the whole nine yards. And when it was time to get ready for bed, we all went into this main like living room where the sleeping beds were going to be laid out, and we were all going to cuddle together on the living room floor. And I was just like, I'll be back. I have to go to the bathroom. But I took all my stuff with me. I changed into my pajamas and then came back. And everybody's like, what's up with that? You're different, right? You're different. Why? It's like, why? And I never shared, oh, I have scars. I don't want you to see them. That's ridiculous. So I never got invited to another sleepover party.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where there's constant reminders of it as you go through life. So fast forward. So at some point you become romantically involved with people. How did you have that conversation with? I'm not digging on the dating part, but like your husband and or someone that was important to you. Was that a nervous conversation for you? How did you approach that?
Yeah. It's so interesting you ask that because now that I do speaking gigs, inevitably, it isn't even an adult that asks me. It's usually a teenager that asks me that, which is so interesting to me. But of course, it would come up in conversation. And so I didn't do a lot of dating for obvious reasons. And when relationships got serious, my first marriage and then my second marriage, there was no preliminary discussion about, oh, by the way, it sort of just happened as you begin to explore each other's bodies.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I think I probably was afraid to be like, oh, by the way, you need to know that because what would your reaction be? Never
Mm.
mind. Don't want to go there. Right. Thanks, but no thanks. So I thought it would be easier just to sort of go there when it happens. And that worked for me for whatever reason. Other people would approach it differently, I'm sure. And nowadays, it's so different. People talk about everything now. There's social media, there are connectors, right? There are clubs to talk about, there are groups on Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And people share and show everything, right? When I was growing up, you didn't have midriff shirts. You covered your bellies. You like all of that, right? Um, so now it's really totally different. And while bullying is a thing, unfortunately, in our schools, we didn't have a name for it back then, but that's what I was. I was bullied for years.
Sure.
Um, but there was no name to it. And now I recognize that, and I work with girls in particular about how they're feeling bullied, why they're being bullied, why bullies bully other people, and how we move forward away from and without bullies. And I think that's just ingrained in me because of what I've experienced.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so on that topic though, like with bullies, what I tell people a lot is this is hard to understand, but it's actually not about you, it's about them. And they're manifesting some insecurity or in their perception, they've got some perceived shortfall and they're trying to make themselves feel better by diminishing you to make themselves feel bigger. That doesn't really help a lot of people in the moment when it's
No,
happening, but
but
it's just the absolute truth. Like to a person, that's why people bully people. I
it's a power
right.
trip.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's funny because right, wrong. I'm a big guy. Like I'm 6'3", and even in good shape, I'm 220. And I've always been a bigger guy. And I've been this way my whole life. I'm aggressive, I'm loud, I'm all those things, but I'm not a bully. I've never been a bully. Um, but I would stand up for people that were being bullied, especially physically, boys that were being bullied. Um, and I never understood it because I didn't understand it at that age. I was like, why are you being a jerk? Like, if you're that tough, come fight me. Like that. I always tell people, if you're gonna be tough, fight someone bigger and tougher than you. That shows me you're tough, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's so hard to understand that. And I agree with you. Everybody talks about everything this day. I think sometimes to a fault. There's sometimes I'm like, whoa, there's things I don't want to know what you're talking. Like, good for you, not a judgment, but I would be better off not knowing the information that you're trying to share with me because I
Right. They call it TMI, right? Too much
yeah,
information. Yes, please.
exactly. Yeah, I don't want to know your proclivities. It's good. Do your thing. Do your
Right.
thing. I'm just not a part of that thing. So, oh my gosh. So, at what point in your adult life did you feel like, hey, and look, I don't even want to put words in your mouth. What made you come out of your shell to talk about your experiences with the burns and start kind of helping other people through that? What triggered that as an adult?
Yeah, so it was very much into my adult life. I just turned 71 this winter, and I have been out of hiding now about 3.5 years. Wait, what are we, 2025? So it was 2020, so 5 years.
Okay.
Um, and there was a very specific event because we all know that timing is everything, right?
Yep.
We may want to talk about something, but we wait for the right timing, or we don't know that it's the right timing until something happens. And so my background is healthcare leadership. I've been in healthcare, running hospital departments and big multi-special medical practices and so on. And so when I decided to retire from that about 7 years ago, I decided to create my own business and become a coach and consultant. And the we also know as we build our own business, it many times becomes something then other than what we had initially thought or anticipated. So my first foray was going to be an image consultant because I'm very big into fashion and color, and what looks good on you won't necessarily look good on me. And because I'm now at that point getting to be a little more confident in myself, I felt like it's time to help other people feel good by wearing clothes that look good on them. So
Hmm.
I launched my business, First Impressions, and I did it with a fashion show. And I used friends and family and early clients that were my models. We held it in a very small resort, not even a resort, a hotel ballroom. And I dressed all my models out of their closet. So all the clothes fit them because they were their clothes. And we had a little bit of entertainment on what really wasn't a runway, but like a stage. And I had probably 60 people maybe in my audience and about maybe 20 exhibitors. So it was very small. And like many communities, Tucson is, we won't go until it's a proven thing. So year one, the attendance was really small and it was a great event. And the response I got was overwhelming. You have to do this again because we want to grow it. And it was a fundraiser for Beads of Courage, a international organization, nonprofit that was founded in Tucson. So a friend of mine who sat on the board introduced me to the founder, and Gina and I met, and we agreed that this would be a fundraiser for them. So year one, we didn't make much money, but it was great, and people wanted more. That was 2018. September 12th of 2019, we held our second annual event. It was in a huge resort in the middle of the mountains in Tucson. I had over 200 in my audience. I had over 50 exhibitors. We had two TV news anchors as the MCs. It was very professional lighting, professional sound, a real runway. And my main sponsor that year was Steinmart, which they're out of business now, but they were a very well known, middle of the road sort of retail clothing store for
Mm.
children, men, and women. And so I met them and they decided to be a sponsor. So all my models at that point, I think I had like 30 models. They were all dressed by me out of Steinmeier. I feel like the story is going too long. Sorry. So
No,
anyway, long
no,
story.
this I love this. Keep it going. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. It's fascinating. Let me just say, I am I don't know if shocked is the right word, but I am shocked that you are just coming out of your shell on all of this stuff because you're just so effervescent when you talk about things. You remind me very much. You have just a charm about you that is very similar to my wife. So I'm enjoying your story very much. Keep going.
Thank you. All right. So anyway, so I am backstage talking to Gene while there's entertainment going on the runway. We had a magician, we had professional dancers, we had high school dancers that had gone on America's Got Talent. So I mean, we had good stuff going on. Anyway, I'm backstage talking to Gene, the founder of Beads of Courage, who at this point I had known about 3 years. And I always tease her, I live vicariously through you because your organization is international. Where were you? Have you been in Japan or London or New York City? And she said, well, I just got divorced and my two boys are in sports. And so I was up in Phoenix and I popped into the Phoenix Children's Hospital Burn Center.
Mm,
And as she got those words out of her mouth, my mouth opened and no words came out. And the tears started to flow and the mascara got ruined. And as that conversation was starting, I got called to the podium. So I went with all my notes and I go up and I'm at the podium and the tears are rolling and I'm looking out at this audience of 200. Many of them I did not know because friends brought friends. The only one who really knew my story, full story at that time, was my husband. And so I'm apologizing to the audience that, I'm sorry, just backstage talking to Jean. And she mentioned that she had been in the unit of the burn, in the child's burn unit of the Children's Hospital in Phoenix. And I said, after a deep breath, I wish my family and I had had that kind of support when I was burned. Well, no one knew the story. So people are like, what? What? And it was a formal tea. So there had been teacups and food and dead quiet. You can hear a pin drop.
mm,
And now, being a speaker, I know to like take that silence and let it build a little. I didn't know that.
yes.
I just went on with my speech. So let's move on, right? So after the event, I was at the doors of the ballroom, thanking people for coming and getting introduced to people. And this one woman who's very well known in Tucson, who I did not know, came up to me and she's like, girl, you have a story to tell. And I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, well, I can tell you my story, but you need to tell me your story. I said, well, whatever. Do you want to go to coffee? And I was like brushing her off. And she said, yeah, let's have coffee. I will call you tomorrow. So she called me. We booked a date for coffee. Long story short, that was September 12th. By December, she had gotten my story out of me because it was time for me to share it. And I had never
Mm,
done that. I learned her story. Her daughter had been born with a very rare blood disease and was living on blood transfusions until literally 10 years ago. She was lucky enough to have a bone marrow transplant. And so she's an amazing young woman, terrific. But I learned this family story. They were actually the recipients of the extreme home makeover when they
yep.
came to. So everybody knew this woman and I didn't. So anyway, so I tell her my story and she's like, you need to tell your story. I'm like, no, I don't think I need to do that. She said, well, my daughter and I wrote a book and it's for kids and it's all about how hard it is when you're a sick kid to get poked all the time, to, go through treatments and whatnot. And she's like, they don't relate necessarily to my daughter's book, but they would relate to your book. And I said, I don't have a book. And she said, exactly, you need to write a book. So I was like, yeah, whatever. So my husband, who we just celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary in May. So
Congratulations.
I say that to give it some um,
Gravitas.
background, yes. And
Yeah.
so we've been together a very long time. And My husband is a journalist by trade. And for a number of years now, he has been an independent journalist. And so after meeting with Kathy, I knocked on his office door one day. He's like, come on in. And we're very respectful of each other's space because we both work out of the house long before COVID. And he's like, what's up? And I said, well, how do you write a book? And he kind of, he's in the middle of work and whatever. And he kind of looks at me weirdly and he said, sit down on the computer and type. And then he said, well, don't, like, if you're serious, don't worry about title, don't worry about chapters, just type. Don't edit, just type. I was like, okay, thanks. Love you. See you later. And I left. And fast forward, right? That was like February, March, the world shut down. It was March of 2020 and COVID hit. So I didn't have a job to go to. My business was really floundering at that moment because not everything was closed down. And I thought, I'm going to work on my book. So I sat at my computer and I typed for weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it was, putting this story together. And I walked into my husband's office one day with a stack of papers. And I said, will you read this? And he's like, what's that? I said, that's my book. That's my story. And he just went, oh, like, really? Because I didn't tell him I was doing it. For me, it was more cathartic. I didn't know it was going anywhere. It was more a diary. And he said, well, I'll read it. He said, but if this is really going to go somewhere, I'm too close to it. I can't be your editor, even though he's had years of editing. So anyway, he read the manuscript. He's like, this is really good. So we had a friend in town who's a ghostwriter, professional editor, whatever. And I reached out to Lynn and I said, I have a favor to ask. And she's like, sure. She reads this manuscript and pardon me, this is a book. This has to get published. Here's how you go about it. And so I reached out to a number of different publications. And I don't know if you or your audience knows, there's a real catch-22 with publishing. You can't get an agent if you don't have a publisher, and you can't get a publisher if you don't have an agent. I had neither. All I had was a story that I didn't even know was worth anything. So I sent to these child psychology publishing companies. I sent to all kinds of publishing companies. I sent it to some agents, and I just kept getting no, 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 no. And Al remembered having met an owner of a publishing company. At the time, I think they were in Tennessee. And he had met her at a writing conference that he had gone to. And he's like, you should reach out to Angela. She might have some pointers. So I sent Angela, not my whole manuscript, but like a chapter. And within 10 minutes, she emailed me back and she said, my son was injured as a toddler. I want to publish your book.
Wow.
Timing. It all comes down to timing. So within a year, I had my first book. It was called The Accident. It was very much geared for young people. I would say 5th or 8th grade and up. It had pictures in it. It had stories. And there wasn't anything about dating, and there wasn't anything sexual or difficult to listen to or read. No difficulties about school or bullying, like none of that. It was just a story. And so it did really well for a first book. And I started getting asked to speak. So I did little speaking gigs. I spoke to a Girl Scout troop and a Boy Scout troop and junior achievement classes and this, that, and the other thing. And it started to blossom. And adults would say to me, this is great, but what about an adult book? And I thought, well, now I'm speaking and I'm telling so many more of the stories that I'm getting more comfortable sharing. I should think about writing a real book. So I did just that. I sat down, and as I did with my first book, I just started typing. And one story led to another story, and I shared this time with my husband as I was going through chapters and stories. And he's like, did you talk about this? No. Well, I think that would be of interest to people because it talks about your fear of heights, and it builds a story around that when we were traveling through Europe. I'm like, okay, fine. So I put that story in. And I sent it back to my original editor, who was very excited to work on this book with me. And she's like, when we went out to dinner a few weeks ago, you mentioned XYZ. That's not in your book. Okay. So that's how this book grew to be what it is. It's not a big book, but it's like 3 times the size of the children's book. And there's no illustrations in it, there's no pictures. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are photos, there are family photos in there. Because the book was published, it came out this April 1, and I lost my mom about 18 months ago. And that was the other missing piece, I would say, to why I hadn't done more sharing of my stories. My mom was, so when with my first book, my mom would sit in the corner when I'd do a book signing, and you could see she would cry.
Mm,
And people attending the book signing would say, "So, Mom, or Claire, or Mrs. Fine, or whatever, what do you remember? What can you share?" And my mother was like, "I have no recollection, period, the end." Like that was her story, no memory. And of course she did, but she wouldn't talk
sure.
about it. And so I felt after she passed that it was my turn to let both my parents know how much I honored what they did, how they supported me as a young person and as an adult. Um, and that I recognized, even though at the time while they were still alive, I never told them how proud I was of them and how much I appreciated their love and support. All great. We're kids. We don't tell our parents the things we probably should tell our parents. I mean, they knew I loved them. We've always had a really good relationship, but I never bared my soul to them. And I felt like it was time to do that, and my book was the means to do that.
Wow. That is such a path to travel. Do you have any of the fashion business left, or have you transitioned full time to the book and speaking? Do you do any coaching around the subjects in the book? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So actually, my business first impressions, I still do, and I love wardrobe consulting. Go into your closet, male or female, help you identify what fits, what looks good, what still has the tags on it, and why are you keeping it? Oh, great, you spent $125 on it, but you're never going to wear it. It's time to put it in the giveaway pile, right? Give it to a consignment store, whatever. So I still do that. I love that. Um, but in addition, because a lot of my career, it was in healthcare and it was leadership, either as a part and parcel to what my role was or as a position in and of itself, I did a lot of human resources work. So I was a director of HR for a very large hospital medical group. And I learned a lot about how to read people. I would do things that other HR directors wouldn't do. If you would come and interview with me and you messed up the interview, many times if I thought you still had good skills and you were somebody I'd want to employ, I would give you feedback and say, look, here's what you need to work on. Come back and re interview. People don't do that. People
No.
today don't do that, that's for sure. They didn't do it back then too much either. And so I mentored people. I mentored people I didn't know. I mentored people that reported to me. I mentored people above me. And I was very fortunate that I had some amazing mentors who I mention in my book as well. So my coaching business coaches people on career paths, career transition. I help with resumes. I help with interview skills, preparation. I do mock interviews with my clients. I do negotiation strategies because, especially when we're, quote, desperate to find our next job, if you offer me $45,000, I'm going to jump on it, even though
Hmm.
I should be getting 65 or 125,000. We don't think to say, oh, what's the salary range? What do you think my skills and experience and expertise, what value do I bring to you? So I coach my clients not to just accept that first offer, because I will tell you probably 99% of the time, no one's going to say, oh, never mind, I'm withdrawing that offer because you've asked that question, right?
Yep.
So I do that. I coach people on networking because the truth is, as the saying goes, it's not necessarily what you know, but who you know. And Tucson's a very small, large community. We're about 1 million people. And I will tell you, when I walk into a coffee shop and I'm there for 2 or 3 hours, I always run into one, two, three, or four people I know.
Mm.
It's a very small community. And so I coach my clients that it's so important to reach out into your community. Reach into my community, have me connect you to people I know in the area, arena, field, whatever that you are looking to grow into. So that I do a lot of networking, not so much anymore, but I used to. I used to belong to all the local chambers and several women's networking groups and blah, blah, blah. I don't do that so much anymore, but I do take my clients to some of those networking groups because, as you can imagine, and your audience, I'm sure, has experienced this, you walk into a room of a networking event and it's intimidating. 20 people, 40 people, 100 people. You don't know, or maybe you know one or two of them. That's intimidating. How am I going to approach Joe and say, "Hi, I'm Gail. How do you like me so far?" Right? And a lot of people get the impression that networking is all about collecting the business cards. How many cards did you get? Oh, I got 30 cards. Well, good for you. What were the conversations that you had? How are you going to go back to your computer tomorrow and say, "Gee, Joe, nice meeting you yesterday. I'd love to learn more about you and your business. Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" And if you don't remember that conversation, you can't write that email, right? And so I teach those strategies because no one teaches you that. No one teaches you that. And I learned the hard way because I had an inferiority complex like this big growing up, right? And imposter syndrome. And so for me to walk into a room was near impossible. I didn't do it for years. My husband would drag me to some of his corporate networking events, and I'd be the only one in the corner standing there watching everybody mingle because I wouldn't open my mouth unless he brought me to a group of people and said, "Gail, this is Joe and Susie." And what he did, which was very smart, and I don't know how strategic it was on his part, but he'd leave me with a small group of people. So I had to talk. And then he'd come back and get me. We'd go get a drink and we'd go to the next group of people. So that's what I do with my clients. I pick them up, I drop them in the middle of a fishbowl, and I leave them. And then I come back and we talk about, who did you meet? What conversation did you have? What did you miss this time? Let's work on that. What's your elevator speech? Right? Everybody likes to talk about themselves. So if you can just have a one liner that opens the conversation. So, Joe, what are you doing here? What brought you to this meeting tonight? Who do you know? Do you want to go get a drink at the bar? Like, whatever. And then you can be quiet. And I can just listen to Joe talk. So I'm off the hook. And people don't realize that. It's easy.
It's funny, isn't it? So my wife and I raised three sons. We have 30-year-old, 27-year-old, 25-year-old now. So they're all out in the world and off the payroll. And I always told them, and look, I just had sons. This works for women too. It works for everybody. But I always told them, if you want to be successful with women, ask them questions about themselves and shut up. Like, it's that easy. And every once in a while, just say, "Really? That's really interesting." And then shut up again. Like, it's that easy. And it's funny because I had very different, I agree with everything you just said, with the one exception that my approach has always been very different. Because, like I said, when we've talked previously, I've always been kind of a hard charger. I've always been a kick the door in kind of a guy. And that presents its own set of challenges too, right? You can come on too strong. There's ways to screw that up too. And I've perfected all of those as well. But, it's never been hard for me. Just ask what you're looking for is to find a commonality. And it's actually better if that commonality is not what you actually are looking for. So let's say that you're a widget seller and I'm a widget buyer. The best thing to do is not talk about widgets, but maybe you sail and I sail too. Maybe you hike and I hike too. Maybe your kid is a dancer and my kid is a dancer too. If you can develop a bond that's outside of the business and start and center the conversation on that, it works so much better than, "I'm a widget buyer. What do you sell your widgets for?" Like, yes, you have that in common, but it's just mechanical and it makes it transactional instead of developing a relationship with a person. And I've been speaking in front of large groups since I was a kid. Like I was a student body president at my high school. And so I regularly ran assemblies with 3,000 people in them when I was 17, 18 years old. And it never bothered me. I'm fortunate that like I don't know, for whatever reason, that's just an environment that's never made me personally uncomfortable. And I coach people a lot of those same things. Like you just have to speak with confidence, you have to speak with conviction, but you have to also have humility. And when people give you constructive criticism, really listen to it. Don't take it personal, but really listen to it because they're trying to help you. Even if they say it in an aggressive way, even if they say it in a way that you might not like, they're actually trying to help in most instances. Are there some knuckleheads out there that are just jerks? Sure, but they're few and far between, really. Um, so I love the message that you're sharing with your clients. And it's so important to, you just never know when that network is going to come into play. Like I'm putting together uh, our youngest son, I'm trying to think, your episode's not going to air for a while. So our youngest son is doing a surprise engagement with his girlfriend on the 4th of July weekend. And so we already know the answer. They bought a house together. So like it's not suspenseful, but it'll be fun. So we're kind of, blending the families and I've got so myself and 7 of the guys playing golf on the Saturday of July 4th weekend. And what I'm going to do is just have everyone draw a number out of a hat and say, okay, number 1 is riding in the cart with number 5. Number 2 is riding with number 6. And just, hey, guess what? You got 4 hours together. Start to get to know each other a little bit because we're all in this together from this point forward. So exactly what you're talking about. And so I love you talking about your approach, the way that you talk about it. Do you deal largely with individuals? Do you ever do consulting for a company? Do you ever deal with groups? What's your typical client look like?
Yeah. So I hate the question, what's your typical client? Because the word nowadays is avatar, right? I've never even seen the movie, but who's your avatar? I don't have one. I work with people that need me and that I feel comfortable working with, and there are corporations that I work with. So what I haven't talked about is I teach customer service.
Hmm,
I teach patient satisfaction. I teach etiquette. Those are things no one teaches anymore.
that's
I
very
learned that
clear.
from my parents.
Yeah.
And it came in very useful in a lot of different ways, but I'll give you one example. So during my healthcare career, many times part of my responsibility was to interview nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and physicians. And after our group would interview them, if we felt like they would be a good fit, we would take them to dinner. Man, you don't get to know anybody really well until you've had them at a dinner table. You walk in with them and you see how they approach the hostess or host. Are they like, hey, I'm Dr. So and so, where's my table? To, thank you very much, I'll follow you, right? To, I'll have the filet mignon. I don't care what anybody else at the table is having, and I know it's not my bill. I'm not paying the bill.
Hmm.
To, let's have a whiskey sour and then 3 glasses of wine, and I hope I'm still able to speak well, right? So you learn a lot about people. And we have hired and not hired people based on that interview. So etiquette means a lot. Are you slurping your soup? Are you using your utensils the right way? Like all of that. It's crazy, but yeah. So I work with clients, corporate clients, I work mostly with on the customer service realm, although I've had corporations have me work with up and coming leaders on their etiquette, on their confidence, on how they speak, how they work with a team on, I don't call it team building because I don't really coach team building, but when you're with a group of people, it's team building, right?
Yep.
So for the sake of today, I will say I work with teams on team building. But I mostly work with individuals, and I work with juniors and seniors in high school that are interviewing either for a job, right? You don't necessarily go to college to be in construction or plumbing or whatever. So they have not interviewed with people. So I work with them. I also work with kids that are interviewing for college, for sports teams, for sororities and fraternities, because again, they've never had that experience. Then my next set of clients really is juniors and seniors in college that are really looking for their very first real job.
Sure. Yeah.
They've never interviewed with a recruiter. They've never gone through a progressive recruiting process. So I do all that with them. And then my next biggest group is really women mostly, although I now have two male clients right now, who are in their mid 50s and transitioning careers.
Yep.
They're stuck. They're insecure. They have imposter syndrome. Whatever it is that makes them want to change fields, careers, companies, whatever. So I work a lot with people transitioning into new arenas. And really the foundation of that comes down to we all have strengths. We have difficulty for the most part identifying what those strengths are. And even when we know what our strengths are, we are not good at identifying how they are relatable, transferable into from nursing into something else, from sales into something else, right? Because back to your comment before, sales, people worry when they hear the word sales. I'm hiring a sales manager. I need a sales whatever. You're not really, in any case that I can think of, selling something other than yourself. You're selling you to build a relationship on which sales will be the final target. Just what you were saying, right? It's not about I sell widgets, you buy widgets, how do we work this out? It's I want to get to know you. What are our commonalities? And let's build a relationship on that. And by the way, how much do you sell those widgets for? Because I need 10 of them.
I love it. Yep. So, such good stuff. And you're speaking my language here because I talk about this all the time. So it's very crazy to me. So, I think we talked in our original conversation. My day job is I'm the CEO of a company that owns and operates grocery stores in Chicago. And so I started in a grocery store bagging groceries at the end of a check stand and grabbing carts out of the parking lot, right? And
Yeah.
I've done every job in the food business from a retail or wholesale perspective you can think of. And as I worked my way up, I remember getting off of a plane in Houston and I'm walking out to transportation and there's a guy standing there with my name on a card. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm Joe Canfield. And so they had sent a car for me. And I'd never, been chauffeured somewhere before. So I got in the front seat. And the guy's like, I made him really uncomfortable because he had his dinner up there. And I'm like, dude, I'm a regular guy. I don't know who you're used to driving around, but like you drew the short straw on this one. There's no way I can sit in the back seat like I'm better than you. It's just not going to happen. So I don't mind holding your Arby's on the trip, but I'm sitting up front. And so we had a great conversation and he talked to me about his family and like he's just a guy doing his job. I'm just a guy doing my job. We can relate with each other for the 20 minutes it took to get from the airport to the hotel that we were going to. And it's so funny you touched on. So I wind up in all sorts of those situations, or I have through my career. So I've done a lot of corporate jet travel because I worked at a company that had a couple of planes and just really experiences. If you would have told me 30 years ago, hey, here's how your life's going to play out, I would have said, get out of town. You got the wrong guy. None of this is going to happen to me. But you learn through those experiences that everybody's just trying to make it through life. And it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your position is. None of those things matter. people still have families, they still have concerns, they still have fears, they still have dreams, and people are people, and you've got to learn to relate to people at whatever kind of level they want to relate to you at. And so it's one of the reasons I've been successful is because I can go on a receiving dock in a warehouse and have great conversations with people and really get to know them. And I can go into boardrooms and have great conversations with people and really get to know them. Because I don't judge based on where I'm standing or who I'm talking to. I just want to get to know them. And that relates back to the sales thing. We actually did an episode on this where I gave some tips for salespeople. And the best tip that I give, at least I think it's the best tip, is you're not selling your product, you're solving a problem for your customer. And you've got to really understand what that problem is. And the example I use, because I'm in the food business, and at one point I sold or was in the food service business, so hotels, restaurants, country clubs, that kind of stuff. You don't want to sell them more lettuce. You want to help them sell more salad, because if they sell more salad, they'll buy more lettuce from you. Like, it's just a difference in how you think about it. But if you approach it like you're consulting their business and helping them grow their business, you develop what I call sticky relationships. It's not transactional. It's not your lettuce is $4 and his lettuce is $3. So I'm going to buy the $3 lettuce from him. It's Joe's lettuce is $4, but Joe, remember Joe helped us rework our menu, and Joe turned us on to this new recipe that's really been selling well. Joe helped us solve problems. And so we want to maintain our relationship with Joe. I call it selling without selling. You've got to learn how to sell without selling. It's just about establishing relationships. You must have so many interesting stories from working with people in these. What's your favorite story without naming names or embarrassing anybody?
It's so interesting because I was making notes as you were speaking. The best managers, best leaders do exactly what you and I are talking about. We build relationships. I'm not better than you because you report to me. You're not better than me because you're a doctor. We all put our socks on the same way, right? Whatever that saying is. So yeah, I have some really good stories. So where do I start? So one story, I told this to a friend the other night. She had never heard it. She was over for dinner and she's struggling with life in general. And we've kind of adopted her. She's probably 30 years younger than we are. Anyway, I was telling her this story because we were talking about putting round pegs in square holes.
Hmm.
Right now, where she is, she's a round peg in a square hole. And I said, so when I was the director of HR for this very large medical hospital conglomerate, I had a reputation for a lot of things, but one of the things I had a reputation for was putting round pegs in round holes. And when I first got to this position, my thing always is ask a lot of questions. Don't tell them how to do things because they may be doing some things right and you won't get to what's going wrong if you try to fix what's right. So we did not have a medical assistant pool. When people called out, whether it was for maternity leave, a day sick, a 2-week vacation, whatever, we called an agency and we had them bring in a medical assistant. Lots of problems with that, right? They don't know your medical system, your electronic health record system. That was all new back then. They don't know your protocols. They don't know your patients. There's a whole lot of things. So what I said was, let's create an MA pool and we'll hire people specifically to go into that pool. And then as we have people leave, right? So to fill spots or to fill in temporary positions, maternity leave, and so on, we'll draw from our own pool. We'll train them on our protocols. We'll train them on our electronic health record, blah, blah, blah. Great. So somebody at one point, I don't remember who it was, came to me very early on in the building of that pool and said, there's this medical assistant that we hired for this doctor, and they're not getting along. It was probably an office manager. I honestly don't remember. I was like, okay, let me sit down with them. So I met with the doc and I found out how terrible this medical assistant was. She didn't listen. She didn't do this. She had her own brain. She didn't, whatever. So I meet with the medical assistant and it's basically Dr. X is an idiot. He doesn't let me do trained to do. He tells me what to do. He wants to, wipe my nose. He wants to do everything for me. And I'm trying to explain I can do certain things to make your job easier and you can see more patients if you let me do what I've been trained to do. I'm not trying to prescribe, blah, blah, blah. So neither one are getting along. They don't like each other. They're not going to work together. And I said, okay, doctor, I will find you a new medical assistant. Medical assistant, I'm going to put you in the pool. You're a great MA from what I see, great training. You can lead our pool. And when we bring in a physician that needs a medical assistant, you will be the first one to get placed, and we'll see how that works. So I interviewed this doctor who left the military and was looking for a position. Great young guy, super laid back. He has seen it all. He's been on the front line of the battlefield. He's seen everything. He knows how to talk to people, regardless of where they are. Because one of the things I do when I interview docs is I ask, I'm your patient, tell me a diagnosis. And, so I get to judge how you are going to relate to your patients. So we hire him. I take this medical assistant out of the pool and I assure her, if this doesn't work, we're not letting you go. You'll go back into the pool. We'll find a fit for you. I said, but I think you guys are going to do well. That was 23 and a half years ago, and they are still together. He is my husband's physician, and she is that medical assistant.
I love it.
He went there yesterday, and they both said, give Gail hugs and kisses for us. They will both be retiring in about a year and a half together. And they both have their separate lives. I mean, they're not family. They're totally, platonic and work relationship, and they trust it, and they've been together that long.
That is awesome. I love that approach by you. It's an approach that I learned over the years is that everybody has value. It's your job as a leader to extract the most value out of the assets that you have on your team. And so as on a personal anecdote, I coached a lot of our kids, a lot of our boys sports when they were young. So up until they were about, I don't know, 13, 14, and they went into like high school sports, I coached a lot of their teams because I was an athlete and I went through college on a baseball scholarship and blah, blah, blah. I've got a lot of leadership skills. I'm a good communicator. And so there, a lot of people wanted their kids to play on my team because I always told parents, look, your kid's not going to play Major League Baseball. They're not going to be in the NHL. So get whatever dreams you've got, set them aside. If it happens, it happens. But like, I didn't know this at the time, but I went through college on a baseball scholarship, and less than 1% of baseball players ever get a scholarship. So I was in the 1% of that field. Didn't know it at the time. It was just what was important to me. So I worked for it. So I have this kid that's my youngest son's age, and he is just a phenomenal kid to coach. He works hard. He's smart. He pays attention. He's there to absorb as much as he can. And his mom effing hates me. She doesn't regular hate me. She effing hates me. And I don't like her. So it's just a personality clash. However, she knew how good it was for her son to be on my team. Even though she didn't like me, she recognized the value. And kudos to her for putting her son's best interests in mind instead of her personal feelings. And so like I started coaching him and he was 7 years old in both baseball and hockey. And I didn't like her either, but she was really good at stuff I'm not good at. And I hate like the administrative side of stuff and making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed on applications and all the money's collected. And it's necessary to do. So I made her my team parent, and everybody's like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Donna is the perfect person for this. She allowed me to just do what I wanted to do, which was coach young boys and teach them to become good men. And I allowed her to do what she was good at, which was make sure all the administrative stuff was taken care of. Because these teams, there was a lot of travel. So you had to book hotels and team meals and order uniforms and enter tournaments and all this stuff. She did it all. And she was phenomenal at it. And so we had a really good working relationship together because I respected her for what she did and let her do it. And she respected me for what I did and let me do it. And so you don't have to be pals or buddies with people to have a really good working relationship with them. I like it when it's that way, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And so I love the way you talk about that and sharing those experiences. There's just so much. That's what I love about our podcast is that we cover so much territory with people, and there's so much to learn when we're talking about this stuff. Now, one thing you've talked about a couple of times, and I was hoping you could talk further about it. You've referenced imposter syndrome a couple of times. Can you kind of, for our guests, describe what imposter syndrome is? And you said you've suffered from it at points in your life or career, and kind of talk about how you worked through that once you kind of identified what it was.
Sure. So I've now been a coach consultant for going on 8 years, and I still sometimes have imposter syndrome. What it is the feeling. It's a feeling of not knowing enough, being good enough. Why am I here? Why have you asked me to coach you? I'm not sure I have what it takes to do that. I know I do. I've been coaching. I have a lot of experience. I have a certificate on my wall. I can do this. But every once in a while, there's someone who will approach us and ask us to do something that's a little out of our comfort zone. And when we don't have confidence, self-confidence, imposter syndrome sneaks in, right? It's that little voice in our head that we all have that speaks to us and says, you're not big enough, strong enough, in my case, tall enough, I'm 4'10", smart enough, quick enough, funny enough, whatever it is, enough. You're not that to do this, right? And we all experience that in different ways and at different times. And so that's what imposter syndrome is. And the way I work myself when I feel that or hear that voice, I do what I work with my clients to do when they struggle with that too, is to make a list. And this is an ongoing list. It's not something I just decide today I'm going to create. It's an ongoing list of the accomplishments you have, the compliments you've received, and things like that. Because when you're in a position or situation where I'm not sure I know how to do this, you've done that before. You've crossed so with bridges, I'm afraid of heights. I'm working on it. When Al and I walk every morning, we cross 2 bridges. When we first started, I'd get to the bridge and turn around and walk away. If I was with him, I'd hold on to him and walk across. Now I can walk across on my own. And when I jitters because the wind is blowing and I feel the bridge move a little bit, I get hesitant. And I think, you did this yesterday. You didn't die. You didn't fall off the bridge. Nothing, so I can do this. And I pump myself up and I do it. And I have my clients do that because when we receive a compliment, whatever that is, that red looks really good on you because it brightens your cheeks. It's a good color for you. Thank you. You did a great job on that project. You did it on time. You did it within budget, whatever it is. Write down those compliments. Write down those accomplishments because then you can go back and say, oh, these are the tools I use to overcome that fear, that imposter feeling, that negativity, that fear. And you can use those tools, repurpose them for the situation that you're in now.
I love it. And so, like, there's just so many situations in life where people have those feelings, right? And no matter where you're at in life, like the first time you have a kid, you're gonna have imposter syndrome as a parent. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. Like they're giving, this is me. You're just letting me have the kid. Nobody's watching because sure you know what you're doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can all wind up in those situations. I think, like, for me, when I think back on it, I think one of the reasons why I developed confidence at a pretty young age is, and so I'm 53, so I grew up in a different world than the one that exists today. And I think it seems to me, and I don't know, probably every generation says this, it seems to me like it's a lot harder to be a kid now than it was when I was a kid. Were there harder things when I was a kid? Sure. but like we didn't have social media. There wasn't all this kind of constant noise and constant bombardment of negative energy that seems to kind of permeate our world now. And so there was a couple of things that people placed, that society placed a high, so what I call social currency on. And as a boy, I was good at those things. So I did well in school. Like school came very naturally to me, like math, for whatever reason, it just clicks in my head. And a lot of people struggle with math. I never did. I was a good speller from a very young age. I could read when I was 2 years old. So there's a lot of social currency in those things, and I got recognized for them. And then I started participating in athletics. And, I was a big, strong kid and I did pretty well in athletics. So I got recognized for that. So for a male back in the 70s and 80s, if you were smart and did well in school and you were a good athlete, like a lot of people really, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, they looked up to you. Like, oh, that must be nice. I'd like to be like him. But even in those situations, like I talked about, having kids, the first time you have a kid, you're like, what the heck? Like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Or I remember when, so when my wife and I very first got married, we were dirt poor like everybody is when they very first get married. You don't know it at the time, but we were. And the brakes on our car, I think we had one car at the time, and the brakes went out. And like I literally just didn't have the $800 to pay to someone to fix the brakes. But back in the day, you could buy what was called a Chilton manual at the auto parts store for whatever model car you had. And the Chilton manual would tell you how to fix anything in that car. And so I bought a Chilton manual. I bought the parts for the brakes, which were about $90 because I could afford the $90 of parts, but I couldn't pay the $700 of labor. And I just put the car out in front of our house and started taking it apart, reading the Chilton manual. And I got it all done and put them back together. And I think if I did a brake job now, because I've done enough of them at this point in my life, but at that point in my life, I'd literally never touched the car other than to turn the key in the ignition. And I didn't know how to change oil at that point in my life. So the first thing I ever did on a car was the brakes. And it was our family car that my wife would drive around with our son, who was our oldest son, who was a baby at the time. So we put it all together, and I went in and said, hey, I'm all done. I'm going to take it for a test drive. I just want you to know I love you and take care of Peter if I don't come back. It wound up working out though. Here I am. So
Right? Oh, that's so funny. But those are such good stories and such good lessons, right?
yeah.
Try something. Get out of your comfort zone and try something. You don't know what you're not good at or what you're good at until you try it. And we always make the assumption that, well, I can't do that because, and I always coach, it's what's worst case scenario, right? Are you going to die? Are you going to injure yourself or someone else?
Mm.
Not likely. So try it. Like, what do you have to lose? Try it. And I've taken that advice to my heart many, many, many times because I grew up just a little bit before you. And as a girl who was not even 5 foot tall, I grew up being told I was to be seen and not heard.
Mm.
And so it fit me great because I didn't want to talk anyway. I wanted to do everything I could to be invisible. But still, you get pushed down so many times that even when you want to share something, you're not down because it's not the thing. It's not the culture or the time to do that. That's one reason I think kids today are very lucky because parents encourage them to talk. Parents encourage them to try things. And like you said, social media, I think, is positive, but it's also very negative because those social norms are put upon our kids that are so heavy. And kids don't know what to do with that. That's why I know there are studies out about, the amount of mental health awareness, mental health needs, all of that. Our kids are really struggling today. We didn't struggle like that. You didn't struggle. We had different struggles,
Yeah.
right? we we were told to get on our bikes and ride after school and not come home until the dinner bell rang. And if we came home too early, the front door was locked. And, I also grew up partly as a latchkid, which is how I raised my stepdaughter, for good or bad. She has her own story to tell. But yeah. And now you like helicopter parents, right? You've got to watch and know exactly where your kid is. And there's you can overstep that boundary as well. But in this world, with the crazy people that there are, because we know about them now, we know about things that we didn't necessarily know about before. You have to be more aware. You have to be attuned to what's going on around you and on social media, and how do you survive? Like my husband not on any social media. I'm like, how do you know what's going on in the world? It's like newspaper. So yeah, I mean it's just a different time.
Yeah. And like you said, there's good and bad, right? So like our show that we're doing, the podcast, is based on technology and we play it on social media. So it plays on YouTube and it plays on Rumble and it's on Spotify and Apple and blah 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 blah. So I'm not I'm not anti social media, but like anything else, there needs to be moderation. And um the other thing I notice a lot with people is they view the virtual world as more real than the actual real world. Like it's wild to me that people go to concerts and then watch the whole concert through their phone. They'll hold their phone up and watch the concert. I'm like, you paid hundreds of dollars to see this person. I took my wife a couple of years ago to see Andrea Bocelli. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's an
Oh,
opera. I love Andrea Bocelli.
yeah.
And he came, I'm in Cleveland. He came to Cleveland. And so I got tickets for Christmas. It was a Christmas present. And we went to that show. And the number of people, it says everywhere, no cell phones, but the number of people that were trying to sneak videos of Andrea Bocelli. And I'm like, you're missing you're in front of this super talented group of people who are putting on such a phenomenal show and you're missing it because you're trying to get friggin' video of it. What is the matter with you guys? Like you're missing the whole point of why we're here. Go home and
Right.
listen to it. Like I've got it recorded. This is a once in a lifetime deal to listen to it live. And I just wanted to absorb it. I'd never once thought about pulling out my phone for 3 hours.
We did the same thing with Celine Dion. It was the same
Oh,
exact experience that you
yeah.
talked. Same exact. We paid a fortune for the tickets. We were there. We didn't have our phones on. They were, in our pocket, turned off, whatever. And everybody around is, they're either doing this, to the music, or they're taking pictures, or like, really? But as you were talking, I was thinking about an example, and now it's gone from my memory. I'm sure it will come back. But there is this thing about not, oh, I know what it was, about not being here now, right?
Mm,
That's saying be here now. My husband and I go out to dinner once or twice a week, and we do it because it's our time to talk. If we have dinner in the house, we might cook together, whatever. We've got music playing. He might answer his phone, or I might. We're both guilty of that. But we go out to dinner and we don't have our phones on unless when my mom was very ill, I had
sure.
that. Other than that, we don't. And you look around the restaurant, and I don't care if it's four girls, two young guys and two young girls, or couples our age, this is what they're doing. Why did you come out? You're not paying attention to the food you're eating or the drink you're drinking, let alone the person that's either sitting next to you or across from you. Like Al and I have 1.5 to 2 hour dinners in a restaurant because we're talking
Yeah.
the entire time. We're talking. And it's great. I don't know what I would do without that time.
Well, and like you said, you just celebrated your 45th anniversary. Like those two things are not coincidental. The fact that you make that time and value that time and that your relationship has lasted happily as long as it has, those two things are not coincidental. So we're a couple years behind you. My wife and I are at 33 at this point, and we do something very similar. In fact, I talked to her today and told her what we were doing. Saturday night, and she likes it better. And I haven't done a good job of this the last couple of years, and I recognized it probably about 2 months ago. I used to just make plans and tell her, here's what we're doing, because she likes that. She loves it. So like if it's a dinner or it's an event or whatever, she loves it when I do those things. Now, when it's anything of consequence, I have almost no say in it whatsoever. She plans and makes all those decisions, and we both like it that way because those details are very important to her, and she's so much better at it. She's so much more thoughtful than me. I would love to tell you, like I said, this it's funny to me that I do this podcast because I'm not touchy feely in any way, shape, or form. Like touchy feely is not an adjective used to describe me in any circumstance. And my wife is so good at being empathetic. It's funny in a business setting, I can read people and rooms and situations better than almost anybody. But in a personal setting, I don't know why, but like I'm kind of tone deaf to it. She's so good at it with people. And so like it works out really well for us. But there again, we play to our strengths, right? So like when we do travel, because I've traveled so much for work, so with flights and hotels and transportation, like I am an expert on those things, and so I just handle all of that stuff and tell her we're leaving for the airport at 11:30. That's all I need you to just be ready to go. Have your bags downstairs. I'll take it from there. And that's it. That's all we do. And then she does those things like on social gatherings or parties or we're going to meet these people or that kind of stuff. So it works out really well for us. But
Yeah, we share that kind of thing, my husband and I, though. We share those responsibilities. It's funny, when we lived back east, we both had crazy jobs, worked out of the house, had my stepdaughter living with us. And we had a housekeeper that came in every other week. It wasn't like we had a lot of money, but we just didn't have the time to keep the place clean. Um, we shared grocery shopping. We shared who's going to who's going to make reservations to go to the movies or dinner or whatever. And now here, because when we moved to Tucson, I had a job out of the house and he was doing the Zoom thing long before it was a popular thing.
mm,
And so he just said, we don't need a housekeeper. I can clean the house. I can do the dishwasher. I can do like, he takes everything. He does the laundry. He does it all. And now that I'm not working crazy hours and I have my own business, I'm like, what do you want me to take back? He's like, no, I'm good. So I balance it in other ways. I'm the one who's the social director. We're going out to dinner with a very good friend of ours who was widowed a couple of years ago. And every few months, we're like, hey, you want to go to dinner with us? We were going to your favorite restaurant. So I do that. And I made the reservations and I invited him. And I was like, hey, Al, are you okay with this? He's like, yep, no problem. So, but I do all that. July 4th is around the corner. We're having some people over. I do all that. I'll run it by him. Here's who I've invited. Is there anybody I'm missing? But yeah, so it's got to be shared. I mean, that's the way it's got to be balanced.
for
Whatever
sure.
that balance is for you and your significant other.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I hear a lot. I guess there's two things I hear that I personally bristle at. Like to each their own. If it works for you, fine. But I married my best friend. That's just not like my wife's a woman. She's not a man. She can't be my best friend 'cause she doesn't know what it's like to be a man. I can't be her best friend because I don't know what it's like to be a woman. And I want her to have other people in her life. I want her to have a group of women that are important to her. I want her to spend time with them. I want her to, especially raising three boys. She's been kind of swimming in a sea of testosterone for the last 30 plus years, and it's good for her to get out. And she's an interesting combination of tough, but still very girly. And she can't do girly stuff around us because we're not girls. We don't do girly stuff, you know? So like when you were talking about your business in terms of consulting on fashion and wardrobe and things like she watches videos of people walking around Milan, Italy and videos of putting outfits together and she naturally has a talent for those things too. So just I was thinking about her while you were talking about that stuff. But so I don't do the best friend thing. I don't buy into that. That to me is like, I think you got to rethink that. I don't know. That's what that relationship should be about. That should be your spouse. That's a very different relationship than a friend. At least from my perspective, it is. And the other one is 50-50. You can take your 50-50 and shove it because things are almost never 50-50. I tell people you got to think about it in terms of 100-100. You both need to be getting as much as you can out of the relationship, and that can look different at different stages of your relationship. So I would bet that when your mom was ill and you were dealing with that, that your husband took on a lot of additional things he wouldn't normally take on because you had to focus on your mom. And so he's going to pick up the slack on other things. And there are other times where he would be dealing with something like that and you would pick up the slack. I know that's how things have worked for my wife and I over the 30 plus years we've been together, but nobody keeps score like these people that, well, I make 47% of the income and she makes 53%. What are you talking about? Are you married or not? Are you guys Hewlett and Packard? Are you, you know, is it a business transaction or are you a couple? Like, make it make sense to me. But you both people in the relationship should be trying to make the relationship as good as possible. And if you're doing that, I think you'll wind up in a good spot. But I don't see that in a lot of instances, I see people that are trying to keep score or they're worried about it being equal. And that's a fool's errand in my perspective.
No, I agree with you 100%. Throughout our 45, 48 years together, it's always been one is carrying more of the burden than the other, whether it's me or I mean, we've both done that, whether
Sure.
it's a person that's sick or we did a commute relationship for almost 5 years because I got a job I couldn't say no to. And my
Mm.
husband was like, you are not turning this down. You have to do this for your career after I got my master's. And so we always talk about stuff. I know couples that don't talk. How does that work? Right? If you can't talk about not just the good stuff and where do you want to go to dinner tonight, but hey, I'm struggling with, can you help with what do you think I can do about like I call it, you may disagree given what you've said, but and I respect what you say, but Al and I consider that we're in multiple relationships. We are spouses. We are best friends because we share everything. That's how we define it. And we're business partners. Our money, my money is our money. His money is our money. And when we buy a car, even if it's his car we're replacing, it's our car, it's our money. What are
Hmm.
we going to do? So, that communication piece, I think, is so essential to being having a great relationship. It
Yep.
just, yeah. We have a few couples that have been in long term relationships, like we have long term marital relationships for a long time. But the most of the people we know are either younger, our age, and divorced. They're widows or widowers that are either looking for or have decided not to look for another person because of their prior experience. I'll never meet anyone like I had in a good way, or I don't want what I had that was bad, so I'm not going there. And yeah, it's so sad to me because what you and your wife and what Al and I have is very special and very unusual.
Yeah, it's funny. I always say that I'm on house money at this point because most people never get a relationship like the one I've been fortunate to be a part of, and I've got 33 years of it under the under my belt now. So like, I went way up to the point where I just can't lose at the casino. I'm playing with house money at this point, and I'm riding the gravy train as long as she decides to stick around. So I know I'm one of the few people that's got it good and knows exactly how good I've got it, and I appreciate it. I love it. I love
Yeah,
it. So
very
um,
special.
yeah, for sure. Is there anything we have not talked about, or any point that you want to make, or a question I haven't asked to get something out on the table that you want to talk about while we're wrapping up here, Gail?
Not that I can think of, honestly.
No, we
I mean,
covered we covered a lot of territory. So we
we
just, yeah, recapping for the audience, so Gail was gracious enough to share her experience as a really young girl being burned and kind of how that impacted her life. And then she shared a lot of her professional experience. She talked about her coaching business, her speaking. She talked about writing books. So you got a lot of free relationship advice from someone that's got 45 years of a great relationship under their belt. So I just want to call out, like we talk about on Salty Ginger Talk, we have awesome people come on that give you great tips and advice on how to build good lives. And you would be wise to go back and watch this episode again and make sure you take notes if you didn't do it already. So, Gail, thank you so much for joining us. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and I learned a ton of stuff. I loved your uh, willingness to kind of share your story to help other people. And I loved all the coaching you talked about from a business perspective. Those two things in particular really stick out for me. So thank you so much for sharing them.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gail. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon. All right, guys. Like we talked about, Gail did not disappoint. What an awesome lady. So we're very fortunate to have her on the podcast. Really appreciated her willingness to talk about a really tough subject that's impacted almost her entire life, being burned the way she was as a very young person and growing up and how that manifested itself in different ways and things, different situations that she was uncomfortable in because of that accident. And then shared a lot about her professional career. What an accomplished lady. Not only in the corporate world, but then she went out and has done several ventures on her own and talked about what that has been like and what a great life she has put together with her husband. So just really appreciative to have Gail on the podcast, and she did an outstanding job. What a neat lady, and we're all better off for having that conversation with her. So, yeah, look, James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to head to the website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Links to all the social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to there. And we would appreciate it if you could like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. We keep finding awesome people. We keep having great interviews with them. We're going to keep doing that. You don't want to miss the next one that's going to have great advice and tips on how you can build a great life for yourself. So make sure you don't miss it. We will see you there.